Let's answer the 3 most common questions we get about our household chemical collection events. I love disposing of my household chemicals and I want to do it more often, but it's only offered once a year in my area. So that's a common question that we often get. And if you've ever been to a collection event, and you get to the very end when they unload your materials, that area is called a hot zone. And in that hot zone, you have to stay in your vehicle because only specially trained staff are allowed to handle and sort hazardous waste. And because you need specially trained staff and the material has to go to a very specially permitted facility, of which there aren't very many in the area, it really limits how often PRC can have household chemical collection events. I love disposing of my household chemicals, but I already spent all this money on them. Why do I have to spend money on disposing of them too? This is ridiculous. So this is a question we often get as well. And as we alluded to in the last few slides, disposal costs include those specially trained staff. Then those trained staff have to transport the material to a specially permitted facility where that material is recycled, reused, or treated. Based on that graph that you see on the left, the average cost per person is about $84.50, and that's based on 9 household hazardous collection events that we had in 2024. However, only 30% of that is $27 is actually paid by each participant. The other 70% is taken care of through grant funding, which is great that we can subsidize that much of the cost through grants. However, we can do better. So PRC has plans for a permanent center for hard to recycle materials, or CHARM. So let's learn about that. If PRC had a Center for Hard to Recycle Materials, or CHARM facility, we could offer these services more often and make more efficient use of funding. So this figure shows the total number of pounds of both household hazardous waste and electronic waste collected annually by 3 facilities. One of them is Westmoreland Cleanways, the second is Lancaster County Solid Waste Management, and the third being PRC. And as you can see from the graph, the Lancaster County collects over 2 million pounds of waste. Westmoreland Cleanways collects roughly 1.7 million pounds compared to PRC, which only collects 580,000 pounds through our collection events, which is only a third of what the permanent facilities are able to collect. So we also wanted to look at participation for each of those facilities. And participation rates for permanent facilities are 11 to 20 times higher than PRC's participation rate, which is calculated as the total number of annual vehicles divided by the total number of households in the county. So with significantly higher participation rates, the 2 permanent facilities also collect 3 to 4 times the weight of material for every dollar they use to run their operation. So this is significant considering that the annual operating budgets of PRC, Lancaster County, and Westmoreland are roughly the same at about $535,000 to $600,000 annually. So PRC could spend the same money more efficiently and serve more people and recycle more material if we had a permanent facility. In order to provide you with some more information on participation rates, PRC's household chemical collection events represent less than 1% participation of Allegheny County residents annually based on data from 2023, compared to those other permanent facilities that we talked about in the previous slides, which are able to serve 8 to 14% of their residents and then steadily increase as the program matures. Now, PRC would still have to provide a pop-up style collection event since both the vendors and transportation to the specially permitted facility is still required. However, we could have those collection events more often if we had a permanent facility. And the logistics and planning costs would decrease since we would no longer have to coordinate with a specific venue. So it's a much more efficient use of funding, and it would allow us to be able to have collection events more often. So if you're interested in learning more detail and signing a letter of support, please go to prc.org/charm support.